Ben Mallory gripped the steering wheel with one hand, the other resting protectively on his daughter Katie's small shoulder as she leaned her head against the window, watching pine trees blur past under a golden sky. The old Pontiac rumbled. Beneath them, the air inside thick with heat and the musty scent of stale road snacks. It was supposed to be a surprise, a father-daughter trip. "Just you and me, kiddo?" he had whispered that morning as they snuck out the back door. Lorraine, his wife, had been asleep, a bottle of gin still open on the kitchen counter. Ben hadn't left a note. He didn't believe in goodbyes anymore. Katie had giggled when they crossed the state line into California. Her red backpack, stitched with rainbows and stars, sat between her feet, filled with coloring books, a half-eaten Twinkie, and a small cassette recorder Ben had given her. She'd been recording pieces of the trip. Truck horns, bird calls, silly songs. Her laughter echoed through the tinny speaker as Ben played back clips, grinning despite the tension that carved itself into the corners of his eyes. But something shifted after sunset. Ben kept checking the rearview mirror, eyes scanning the horizon, as if waiting for headlights that never came. When Katie asked if someone was following them, he smiled too quickly. "Just tired, baby girl. Just tired." They pulled off I-5 around 9 p.m. to refuel at a lonely Chevron station near mile marker 56. Surveillance footage, later recovered from grainy VHS tapes, would show Ben stepping out of the Pontiac, pacing for several minutes before walking into the station. Katie stayed inside the car, barely visible in the back seat inside. Ben bought a single bottle of water and 2 chocolate bars. His hands trembled as he passed the cashier a $10 bill. The young clerk, a part-time college student named Randy Fields, remembered Ben vividly. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Randy would later tell investigators, kept glancing at the door like someone was going to burst in and grab him. Before leaving, Ben leaned in close and asked a strange question. "You ever see someone just disappear?" Randy thought it was a joke. Ben wasn't smiling. Outside, Katie rolled the window down and asked for her chocolate. Ben handed it to her with a quick kiss on her forehead, then walked around the car, opened the trunk, and stood there motionless for nearly a minute. That was the last time anyone saw them. The Pontiac pulled away from the gas station at 9:17 p.m., headed south on a dimly lit highway bordered by forest. No traffic cameras caught them after that. No witnesses came forward. The car vanished. So did Ben and Katie. For days, local deputies combed the area, assuming a crash. Helicopters scanned the woods. Flyers were posted. News anchors showed Katie's photo, freckled cheeks, missing front tooth, rainbow backpack. But no wreckage was found, no bodies, no trace of them at all. Lorraine Mallory reported them missing 3 days later. She claimed she had no idea Ben was taking Katie, said they fought the night before and she'd passed out drunk. Her voice cracked when she said she thought they'd be back by morning. The case quickly lost steam. Authorities treated it as a domestic custody dispute. Ben, they believed, had taken off intentionally, fleeing either the collapsing marriage or something worse. There was no sign of foul play, no credit card activity, no confirmed sightings, just nothing. Still, Katie's name remained in the National Missing Persons database. Her image aged every few years by computer software no one trusted. The mystery faded from the headlines, replaced by new tragedies. But at the edge of the Pacific Northwest, one woman couldn't let it go. Lorraine sat for years by a cluttered kitchen table, piecing together maps and timelines, dogged by guilt and suspicion. She claimed to believe they were alive somewhere, but her theories grew more erratic as time passed. She accused everyone from Ben's co-workers to state police of covering something up. Privately, she had nightmares of Katie crying, of headlights in the trees, of blood. And in her darkest moments, Lorraine would whisper to herself, something wasn't right with Ben. She never told police what Katie had once said to her weeks before they vanished. "Daddy says we might have to run again." She thought it meant camping. She was wrong. 15 years later, a rusted blue Pontiac was found in a Nevada junkyard. The trunk had been welded shut. Lorraine Mallory sat in her dimly lit kitchen, surrounded by silence. The ticking wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, all of it seemed louder than usual. She stared at the phone. It had been 3 days. She hadn't called the police right away. At first, she thought Ben would bring Katie back, that he just needed time to cool down. Their arguments had been brutal lately, loud, venomous things that made neighbors shut their windows. But Katie, she was innocent. Ben would never hurt her. That's what Lorraine kept telling herself. Then, the voices began creeping in, whispers in her mind reminding her of things she had ignored. Katie's fear of the dark, the way she'd flinched when Ben raised his voice, and that final sentence she barely remembered hearing. "Mom, Daddy says, if we go missing, don't trust anybody." On the 4th morning, Lorraine called the police. Detective Andy Schultz, a wary middle-aged officer from the Lane County Sheriff's Office, arrived in an unmarked car. Lorraine answered the door barefoot, holding a cigarette and smelling faintly of gin, though she hadn't drunk in over a week. "I know what this looks like," she said before he could speak. "But you need to listen to me. My daughter is missing." Schultz took a seat in her cluttered living room, pen ready. Lorraine explained everything: how Ben had taken Katie without permission, how they'd left without telling her, how she'd tried to stay calm. She admitted she'd been drinking the night they disappeared. "What was the state of your marriage?" Schultz asked, watching her carefully. Lorraine bit her lip, tired, rotten, but not violent. Not at first. Had he ever taken Katie before, without telling you? She hesitated. "Yes, once. For a few hours he said he just needed space." That was the first red flag in the report. Then came the second. "He'd been paranoid lately," Lorraine continued. "Said people were watching him. That he'd done things he couldn't undo. I thought he was losing it." "Did he say what he'd done?" "No. But he'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, talking to himself. Katie saw it too." Schultz jotted down notes, but in the official report, the words domestic conflict were scribbled across the top. To him, this was another custody dispute, the kind that dragged on for months and left children stuck between two unstable parents. "I think he's running," Lorraine said, voice cracking. "But not from me, from something else." "Like, what?" "I don't know. But whatever it is, I think he planned this." Police issued a bolo "Be on the lookout for Ben's car" and circulated Katie's photo to state agencies. The Pontiac's license plate was added to databases. Gas station attendants were questioned. Highway patrol alerted. But to facts hindered progress. First, Ben Mallory had no criminal record, no history of violence, nothing to flag him as a threat. Second, Lorraine was unreliable in their eyes. She had 2 DUI charges, an arrest for disorderly conduct, and a hospital record that hinted at mental health struggles. When she cried during the interviews, some officers believed it was more about guilt than fear. Lorraine knew they didn't trust her. "I'm not crazy," she told Detective Schultz during their 3rd meeting. "Ben wasn't who he said he was. I think he was hiding something. He'd change the subject every time I asked about his past." "Did you ever see documents, a birth certificate, anything official?" She shook her head. "No." He said paperwork made him nervous. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were clear. She wasn't drunk, not anymore, but none of it mattered. A week passed, then 2. The story made the local papers but fizzled out fast. Without a body, without the car, there was little to investigate. Eventually, the case was labeled non-custodial parental abduction. Lorraine screamed when she saw those words printed on the official report. She's not just abducted. She's gone. Disappeared. That man is not her father. Not really. He lied to me. He lied to her. And now they're both gone. Her claims were dismissed as emotional distress. An officer quietly suggested therapy. Another left her pamphlets on support. Groups no one followed up, but Lorraine didn't stop. In the years that followed, she sobered up completely. Her days were spent combing through maps, tracking sightings, and cold-calling gas stations along old highway routes. She attended trucker conventions, diner openings, even flea markets. Anywhere someone might remember the car or the girl. She never changed her phone number. Just in case, Katie called. Katie never did. Then, one Tuesday morning in 1999, Lorraine received a call from a man who introduced himself as Cal Henders, a long-haul trucker. He remembered seeing the Pontiac in a Nevada junkyard almost a decade earlier, a blue car with a rainbow sticker and a dented rear fender. "I thought it looked familiar when I saw your flyer in the diner window," he said. "The yard's called Westburn Salvage. It's just outside Illy, real isolated." Lorraine didn't even hang up before grabbing her coat and keys. Hours later, she stood beneath the desert sun, staring at a line of wrecked vehicles. Most were rusted beyond repair. But then she saw it. The blue Pontiac dot. She knew it instantly. Her knees buckled. Her hand clutched her chest. The car had been stripped of plates and its windows were shattered, but the rainbow sticker was still there, faded but intact. Inside the front seat, a CASSETTE tape sat melted to the dash, dot, and the trunk. Welded shut, the Pontiac sat baking under the Nevada sun, its once blue paint faded into a dusty, ghostly gray. Detectives arrived within hours of Lorraine's call. They cordoned off the area, photographed every inch, and arranged for the car to be towed to a secure facility for forensic processing. But while the discovery stunned investigators in 1999, it also forced them to reopen a trail that had gone cold 15 years earlier, a trail long buried under silence, oversight, and weather. Detective Schultz, now retired, was brought back in as a consultant. He hadn't forgotten the Mallory case. He never could. The look in Lorraine's eyes back then had haunted him, not drunk, not confused, just desperate to be believed. The investigation team began reconstructing Ben's route from Oregon to Nevada, using gas station logs, faded diner receipts, and rare witness accounts that had mostly been overlooked or dismissed. A pattern emerged, subtle but undeniable. Ben had been avoiding highways. From Lane County, he took Route 138 through Roseburg, then veered off into small-town backroads. No toll booths, nor surveillance. He filled up twice at obscure rural stations where attendants remembered little, except one detail. The man was always in a hurry, always paying cash. One station manager, a grizzled old man named Cliff Hargrove, vaguely recalled Ben and Katie. Stopping in, she was real quiet. Holding some kind of tape recorder, Cliff said. He wouldn't let her talk to anyone. From there, they passed through the town of Paisley. Oregon population under 300. There, a waitress named Connie Reeves remembered the pair vividly. It had been storming that evening, the sky bruised purple and yellow, thunder trembling through the dusty parking lot. They came in just before closing, Connie recalled. The little girl was crying. Not throwing a fit, just sad. Scared, maybe. She remembered Katie had asked to use the bathroom. When she came out, she held her stuffed rabbit by the ear, dragging it like it had no life left. Ben, meanwhile, had been unusually tense. He kept glancing out the window. Asked me 3 times if I'd seen any state troopers around lately. Said he was trying to stave off the radar. At first, I thought he was a criminal. But then he started asking weird things. Like what? Detectives asked. Connie's lips tightened. He asked if people could track a person through their voice. Said he'd heard about machines that could do that. I laughed it off, but he wasn't joking. She also remembered that he left a note with a fake name, Daniel Fry. Paid in cash, no tip. That same night, a violent thunderstorm swept across the region, knocking out power lines and flooding several rural roads. Search and rescue teams would later say the storm erased any tracks Ben might have left. Riverbanks overflowed, unpaved roads became trenches of thick red mud, and ditches filled with runoff. Whatever path he'd taken after that, it was gone. The next confirmed sighting came from a forest ranger in Modoc County, Northern California, who reported seeing a man and a young girl sleeping in a parked car near Medicine Lake. He remembered the rainbow sticker on the bumper, said the girl looked unwell. I asked if they were okay, the ranger, Harold Gunn, told reporters years later. The man just nodded, didn't say a word, looked at me like I was deaf. Harold noted the license plate, But before he could radio it, lightning cracked through the trees and spooked his horse. By the time he calmed it, the car was gone. Back in present day, investigators stood before the recovered Pontiac with gloves on and cameras rolling. The interior was stripped and sun-damaged, but in the back seat, they found what appeared to be melted plastic, cracked sunglasses, and under the floor mat, the corner of a cassette tape poking through. Katie's name was scratched into the plastic casing. Lorraine was called in to identify the item. The moment she saw it, she collapsed in tears. "I bought her that recorder," she whispered. "For her 8th birthday, she never went anywhere without it." The forensic team tagged and bagged it. The tape was partially melted, but intact, perhaps playable. But something else drew their attention: the trunk. Unlike most junked cars that were left wide open or pried apart, this one was welded shut with crude, uneven seams. Whoever had sealed it didn't want it opened. A blowtorch was brought in. As the metal hissed and groaned, everyone held their breath. When the lid finally creaked open, the investigators peered inside. It was empty, no body, no bones. Just a child's red shoelace tangled in a wad of cassette tape ribbon, and a powerful metallic odor that hinted at long-faded trauma. Even so, the discovery reopened every wound. Lorraine clutched the shoelace as if it were Katie's hand. "She was in there," she said through clenched teeth. "He put her in there." Detectives weren't sure. Maybe she had, maybe not. Maybe someone else had driven the car to the junkyard. Maybe Katie had lived longer. Maybe she hadn't. But what became clear, as investigators looked back over the unmarked roads Ben had taken, was this: he wasn't just running. He was hiding, and he wasn't alone. Lorraine Mallory stood in front of her living room wall, tracing her finger along a map of the western United States. Strings, pins, and faded post-it notes formed a jagged spiderweb across state lines, gas stations, rest stops, ghost towns. Next to it was a photo of Katie, age 8, with a crooked smile and a missing front tooth. Beneath it, taped to the wall, like a shrine, her red shoelace. 15 years had passed since the night. Her daughter vanished. Lorraine was no longer the fragile woman with shaking hands and gin in her veins. She hadn't touched a drink in over a decade. Her voice was steady now, her words sharp. Her obsession with finding Katie had replaced the bottle. Everyone else had moved on. The world had forgotten, but Lorraine hadn't. She called it the noise, that moment in her mind just before sleep, when she'd imagined Katie's last breath, alone in the dark. It never faded. It only got louder with time. Her days were filled with lists. Every junkyard, every mechanic shop, every salvage lot between Oregon and Nevada. Hundreds of cold calls, voice messages, handwritten letters to ex-cops and reporters. She kept a journal of her theories. She had a drawer full of license plate numbers, most written in smudged ink or collected from dusty parking lots. And then, on a Wednesday morning in July 1999, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was gravelly, cautious. "Miss Mallory, my name's Cal Henders. I'm a trucker. I think I might have seen that car you've been looking for." Lorraine sat down, heart thudding. "Where?" "There's a yard off Route 50 near Ely, Nevada, place called Westburn Salvage. I stopped in there back in '87. There was this blue Pontiac looked out of place. Rainbow sticker on the bumper, back left panel dented. It stuck with me. Saw your flyer in a diner this morning, and, well, thought I should call." Lorraine wrote every word down with shaking hands. She didn't wait for the police. By nightfall, she was driving through the desert, her old Ford coughing through gusts of dust and wind. Her hands gripped the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every few minutes, she whispered to herself, "Please let it be hers." The sky turned to bruised purple as she reached the edge of Ely. Westburn Salvage sat on the outskirts, a graveyard of forgotten metal and broken machines. The gate was open. She parked and stepped out into the stifling heat, her boots crunching over gravel. A man emerged from a rusted trailer near the entrance. Greasy hair, oil-stained shirt, cigarette dangling from his mouth. "You lost," he grunted. "I'm looking for a car," Lorraine said, holding up a copy of Katie's missing poster, 1980 Pontiac. Blue rainbow sticker on the bumper. The man squinted at the photo, then scratched his beard. Might have had something like that. Been here a long time though. Come on. He led her between twisted rows of cars, some stacked 2 or 3 high. Lorraine scanned each one, holding her breath until she saw it. Her knees almost gave out. There it was. The Pontiac, stripped, faded, sunburned, but unmistakable. The rainbow sticker was still there, barely clinging to the bumper. The back panel had the same dent. The front seat, though melted and torn, still had the faint outline of where Katie's booster cushion used to be. "I need the police here," Lorraine said, her voice barely a whisper. Now, detectives arrived the next morning. Crime scene tapes stretched across the lot as forensic techs descended on the scene. The Pontiac was towed out with care, its rusted wheels shrieking as they turned. Inside the car, melted tape cassettes, shattered glass, a pair of children's sunglasses, and what looked like the remains of a pink hair tie wedged in the back seat. Lorraine watched from the fence, her fingers gripping the wire so tightly they bled. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just whispered, again and again, "I knew it. I knew you were here." The media caught wind of the discovery within hours. Headlines resurfaced. Break-in 15-year-old missing child case. Cameras rolled as news vans lined the edge of the salvage yard. But Lorraine didn't speak to reporters. She stayed silent, eyes locked on the car like it might still hold her daughter's voice. Later that day, detectives confirmed the vehicle belonged to Ben Mallory. The VIN matched records from 1984. The license plates were missing, but the forensic markers were irrefutable. The cassette tape, the one with Katie's name scratched into the casing, was carefully sealed in evidence. A forensic audio technician said it might be partially recoverable. The trunk, still sealed, would be opened under controlled conditions back at the lab. For Lorraine, the car was a corpse, not a body, but a grave, a container of secrets. Detective Schultz arrived late that evening. Time had etched deep lines into his face, and his hair had turned completely grey. But he remembered every detail of the case. "It's her car," he said simply. Lorraine nodded, eyes full of dust and years. "I told you she didn't run away. I told you something was wrong with him." Schultz didn't argue. Not anymore. But, as they stood in the fading light, staring at the Pontiac being hauled away, Lorraine turned to him. "He was hiding something," she said. "He wasn't just running, he was scared." Schultz didn't respond, but her words stayed with him. That night, under the stars, Lorraine dreamed of Katie for the first time in years, her voice whispering through static. And the next morning, the audio lab called. They had managed to recover part of the tape. Lorraine stood behind the observation window, watching through glass as forensic examiners surrounded the Pontiac under cold white lights. The garage was silent except for the hum of equipment and the occasional snap of gloves. The air smelled like rust and bleach. Detective Schultz entered quietly beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. Lorraine didn't look away from the car. "They're opening the trunk now," he said. Lorraine gripped her cup but didn't raise it. Her throat was too dry. A technician leaned over the car's back end, guiding a motorized cutting tool along the welds. Sparks lit the room like tiny fireworks. Everyone paused as the lid slowly creaked open, its hinges screeching like something from a graveyard. Inside the trunk, time had left its fingerprints. The first thing they saw was a red backpack, faded and frayed at the edges. One of the straps had snapped. A broken zipper hung open, revealing crushed crayons, a hairbrush, and a pink plastic barrette shaped like a butterfly. Nearby was a cassette tape, rusted and warped, but still legible on the label. In Katie's childish handwriting, "Katie's tape, secrets only," Lorraine gasped. Her hand went to her mouth. "That's hers," she whispered. "That's her backpack. She had it when she left." The technician gently lifted the tape and set it in a separate evidence bag. The backpack followed. Lorraine's knees weakened, but she stayed upright, clinging to the ledge of the window. Then came the blood dot. At first, it looked like rust, but closer inspection revealed smears along the base of the trunk floor, dried and dark, staining the lining. It had pooled in the left corner, as though something or someone had bled there long ago. The technician confirmed it. Human blood, not fresh, possibly decades old. "We'll run DNA," Schultz said quietly. "It might be hers." Lorraine said nothing. Her eyes stayed locked on the stain. The contents were photographed, catalogued, and removed. When they pried open the glove box, another surprise was waiting. A folded piece of yellowed paper, lined, torn at the edge. Tucked behind an expired registration card, the technician opened it slowly. The note read, "She cries too much at night. I can't keep doing this. They'll find us. I told him this was a mistake. I told him not to take her." It wasn't signed. The handwriting was neat, controlled, feminine. It didn't match Ben's. Schultz narrowed his eyes. Who the hell wrote this? The discovery changed everything. Back in the evidence lab, Lorraine sat across from Schultz as he placed the letter in front of her. Her hands shook as she read it, lips silently forming the words. "This isn't Ben," she said. "You recognize the handwriting?" She hesitated. "No, but it's not his." His handwriting was sloppy, left-handed. "This is clean." Schultz leaned forward. "Lorraine, is there anyone else, any woman who might have been traveling with them?" "No." She blinked. Unless he met someone on the road. But he would have told me." The words sounded hollow even as she said them. Would Ben have told her anything? She was starting to realize how little she'd actually known him. The next day, the DNA results came in. The blood in the trunk was a partial match to Katie's, too degraded for full confirmation, but enough to suggest a biological link. The media exploded. Headlines ran across the country. Breakthrough in 15-year cold case. Blood, backpack, and a tape. The Mallory mystery. TV trucks parked outside the police department. Reporters begged Lorraine for statements. She refused. Instead, she sat in the evidence room, staring at the tape labeled Katie's tape. Secrets Only. Audio specialists worked for hours restoring the damaged cassette. Parts were too warped to recover. Others were muffled or blank. But one section, just under 90 seconds, played clearly. They called Lorraine in when it was ready. She wore headphones, hands clenched in her lap, as the reel spun, and the hiss of static gave way to a soft, trembling voice. "This is Katie. I'm in the car. Daddy says we're going to the desert, but it's really hot and I don't feel good. He told me not to talk to strangers. He says Mummy's sick, but I don't think she is." A pause, then a whisper. "He says I have to be quiet at night because the lady gets scared. She cries sometimes too. I think she wants to go home." Silence. Then a faint sound. A knock, a shuffle. Then a man's voice in the background, not shouting, but tense. "Put it away now. The tape ends there." Lorraine took off the headphones, face pale. There was a woman, she said. There was someone else. The implications sank in. Like cold water, someone had been with them. Another adult, another secret. Schultz turned to the tech. "Can we isolate the man's voice?" The tech nodded. "We're already working on it." Back at the precinct, the letter was scanned and cross-referenced with old records, but no immediate matches came up. No fingerprints, no known associates. The note remained a ghost, but the tape had changed the tone of the case. What had once been a presumed father-daughter disappearance now felt like a triangle. Katie, Ben, and a mystery woman no one had ever reported. And the more Lorraine thought about it, the more memories stirred fragments. Comments Ben had made, odd silences, vague references to someone named Joy. Was Joy the woman? Was she real? Had Katie's final days been shared with a stranger? Lorraine didn't sleep that night. The tape played on a loop in her head, especially the part about the crying lady. She couldn't stop thinking, if someone else wanted to go home, why didn't they? And then a new question came. What happened to her? The hum of a broken ceiling fan buzzed over the stale silence inside the cracked trailer in Panica, Nevada. Flies clung to empty beer cans stacked along the window ledge. Ray Tuller sat slumped in a vinyl recliner, unshaven, sun-damaged, and yellow-eyed. The kind of man time hadn't just weathered, it had punished. 2 detectives from Carson City stood over him. One of them, Detective Alan Voss, had worked cold cases long enough to recognize the smell of regret. The other, rookie detective, Jamie Harlan, kept glancing at her notepad, as if afraid she'd miss the moment it all unraveled. Ray lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "You found the Pontiac," he rasped, exhaling smoke that curled toward a cracked Jesus portrait above the TV. Voss didn't answer. Instead, he slid a single photo across the table. Katie's red backpack, worn and stained, its zipper barely hanging on. Ray stared at it. His hand froze midair. For a second, something ancient and haunted flickered in his eyes. "You ever see that before?" Harlan asked. Ray's jaw clenched. "Yeah," he whispered. "I seen it. Long time ago. Didn't know the kid's name. Didn't ask." The room tightened. Voss leaned in. "You're not being charged yet. We just want to know what happened." Ray gave a bitter laugh. "No one just wants to know. You want a story that fits in a folder. Then tell us the truth," Harlan said softly. Ray flicked ash into an empty soda can. "Guy came to my shop back in '87, had that car, said it broke down outside Alamo, said he wanted it gone, asked no questions, paid in cash, thick envelope, said if I crushed it, I'd get a bonus." "You crushed the car?" Voss asked. Ray shook his head. "I couldn't. Something about it ... didn't feel right. So I stripped the tags, drove it out to the edge of my cousin's junkyard, covered it with tarps. Figured if anyone ever came sniffing, I'd say I bought it legit." Harlan leaned forward. "What about the blood in the trunk?" Ray's cigarette wobbled. "I didn't look. I swear to God, I didn't open that trunk. Man paid extra for me not to look." "What did he look like?" Voss asked. Ray paused. His voice turned cautious. "Late 30s. Military haircut. Eyes that didn't blink much. Not the dad from the news. Someone else. Said his name was Darryl." He swallowed hard. "But I don't think that was his real name." Voss exchanged a glance with Harlan. Ray continued, voice thick with something between fear and guilt. "I asked once what happened to the kid. You know what he said? He looked me dead in the eye and said, 'She's safe now. Her father won't ever touch her again.'" Silence. Harlan's pen stilled on the page. "Did you ever see that man again?" Ray nodded slowly. "Twice. First time he dropped off a letter, told me to put it in the glove box. I never read it, swear. On my mama's grave. Second time, he just stood across the street from my shop, watching. Never said a word. Just smoked a cigarette, like he was making sure I'd kept my mouth shut." "You didn't report any of this?" Voss asked, stunned. "I was on parole." "Man, you think I wanted cops crawling through my shop? I figured, if the kid was safe, maybe I didn't need to know more." "But she wasn't safe," Harlan said coldly. Ray dropped his head. "I know that now." Outside, the desert sun hung low, casting long shadows over the trailer park. Vultures circled in the distance, their silhouettes like smudges against the orange sky. As the detectives left the trailer, Voss whispered, "What the hell was that about the dad?" Harlan flipped through her notes. Ray made it sound like Ben Mallory might have been abusive, but there was never any history of that. Voss frowned. Unless it was never reported. They stopped by their car. Harlan glanced back at the trailer. "You think the man Ray met was a vigilante? Maybe someone who thought he was saving Katie from her father. Or someone who used that excuse to take her," Voss replied. The night deepened. The only sound was the crunch of their boots on gravel and the distant howl of a dog. A question neither said aloud lingered in the air. Was Katie ever alive when that car reached the junkyard? Back in the trailer, Ray sat alone in the dark. He stared at the Jesus portrait, but didn't pray. He just lit another cigarette, the red tip flaring in the gloom, and then, from the closet behind him, something shifted. A quiet metallic clink. Ray froze. He turned slowly. "Hello," no answer. He stood, heart hammering, pulled open the closet door, empty. except for a single object on the floor, an old rusted dog tag with a name scratched off, and beneath it, a faded photograph. Katie Mallory. Smiling next to a strange man in an army jacket. Ray's cigarette fell from his mouth. Far away, in the back seat of the detective's cruiser, Harlan flipped through the contents of the glove box photo again, the mysterious letter. Her eyes narrowed. It's typed, she said. But there's a smudge in the corner. Could be a fingerprint. Voss nodded. We'll run it. She stared at the page. This part here, it doesn't sound like a goodbye. It sounds like a warning. The words read, they'll say I took her, but the truth died before the car did. The cruiser pulled out onto the road, taillights blinking into the dark, unknowingly headed toward a deeper mystery. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the tape machine. Investigators, forensic analysts, and Lorraine herself sat huddled around the old cassette player in the evidence lab. Breath held like a match might blow it all away. The tech paused before hitting play. Ready? He asked gently. Lorraine only nodded, eyes locked on the tape deck like it was a bomb or a ghost. Then, static. Crackling silence. Then, faint breathing. A girl's voice came through small, trembling, almost too soft to hear. Double quotes. Hi. This is Katie, she whispered. Lorraine's hand flew to her mouth. Her whole body shuddered. The voice was muffled, like recorded under a blanket. We're in a car, in the trees. I don't know where. He's not my dad. Please, help us. Scratching sound. Then, a quick, terrified breath. Please help. Click silence. The room stayed frozen for a long moment. No one moved. Lorraine dropped to her knees. She's alive. She was alive. She sobbed. She knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. Agent Dana Ridley, now heading the revived investigation, exchanged a look with Detective Kravitz. Rewind it, she said sharply. Play it again. The voice returned, but it wasn't just the fear that struck them. It was that single line. He's not my dad. It threw everything upside down. Her father was Ben Mallory, Kravitz said slowly. He was Katie's legal father on the birth certificate. Was he? Ridley shot back. Let's check again, all of it. Birth records, military files, DMV. Dig into every identity trail. If he wasn't Ben Mallory, who the hell was he? It was late by the time Lorraine could stand. She sat in the back of the precinct's quiet lounge, nursing cold tea. She said it. Lorraine whispered aloud, like to the air. He's not my dad. That wasn't just fear. That was a truth she couldn't explain back then. Detective Kravitz joined her, cautious. Can I sit? She nodded. He lowered himself beside her. Lorraine, We pulled Ben's original license file. Something's off. His first license was issued in 1974, but his social security number was created in 1979. That's backwards, doesn't match up. Loren's gaze turned ice cold. So he made himself up. Kravitz nodded. Maybe. But why? She asked. Why take her on a trip? Why vanish? Why fake a life? Kravitz looked away, hesitant. That's what we're trying to find out. Meanwhile, across town, Agent Ridley and her team dug through every state record they could access. They scoured Ben Mallory's school, job, and army files. More inconsistencies. His high school had no yearbook photo. His employment record included a company that didn't exist anymore. And his army discharge papers, the ink, oddly faded, didn't match standard formatting by dawn. Ridley had a bulletin board full of contradictions. She stared at the board, lips tight. He built an identity. From scratch, but why target Lorraine? Why marry her, have a kid, and then flee? She glanced at Katie's child photo tacked next to Ben's. You weren't his, she murmured. But he made sure you thought you were. The next morning, Lorraine arrived with a cardboard box. I've kept these since 1984, she said. Old journals, receipts, Christmas cards. I read through them every year, but I never looked between the lines. They combed the materials page by page. In one corner of a 1982 postcard, Ridley noticed something odd. The stamp was lopsided. She peeled it gently. Behind it, a name that wasn't Ben Mallory, written faintly in pencil, J. Halverson. Ridley sat back. That's not a mistake. Kravitz punched it into the system. Jack Halverson, alias flagged in a 1978 child trafficking ring out of Oregon. Never caught. Went dark after 1979. The air grew colder. You think, ... Lorraine's voice broke. You think, Ben, whoever he was, took her. Kravitz didn't speak. The silence said enough. The phone rang. Ridley answered, listened, then hung up. They matched the DNA from the blood in the trunk. She said softly. Lorraine braced herself. Katie. Ridley shook her head. No, not Katie's. Male, not Ben's either. A chill ran through the room. Then who? Lorraine whispered. We don't know yet. But we're not chasing a custody case anymore, Ridley said grimly. We're chasing a ghost with more than one victim. She looked at the tape recorder still sitting on the desk, silent now. There may be more of these cassettes, she said. Ray Toller said the story he was paid to bury came in pieces. Lorraine's eyes widened. Katie might have left more, hidden them. Ridley nodded. If she did, they're buried somewhere in the woods, in the car, somewhere we haven't looked. Kravitz leaned in. Then we better go back to the junkyard, because if there was a tape 3, there might have been a 1. And a 2. And somewhere in those tapes, maybe, just maybe Katie, had left behind the key to what really happened that night in 1984. The air inside the precinct was heavy. The tape had shifted everything, and now the name J. Halverson had become the thread unraveling a decades-old illusion. But no one expected what came next. Agent Ridley stood silently as the forensic analyst laid out the final report. On the table, she scanned the pages, her jaw tightening. We ran the latent prints again, the analyst said. Not just from the steering wheel and the old glove compartment. We reprocessed the rearview mirror. Ridley didn't look up. And, the analyst hesitated. They match a man named Carter Doyle, not Ben Mallory. Kravitz leaned forward. Carter Doyle confirmed. The analyst replied. Born 1947, Illinois, disappeared after being named the primary suspect in a 1976 child abduction case involving a 3-year-old girl named Catherine Doyle. Everyone froze. Katie, ... double quotes. Lorraine whispered, Catherine Doyle. Ridley dropped the report on the table. Katie was his victim. He kidnapped her when she was 3 years old, in Illinois. That was 8 years before. You ever met him? Lorraine stumbled back into the chair behind her. Her face had lost all color. He told me we had her together. I believed I was her mother, she said, trembling. I loved her. I raised her. I thought I gave birth to her. You didn't, Ridley said, softer now. You weren't part of the abduction records show Carter, under one of his many aliases, met you shortly after he arrived in Oregon in 1979. You were young, you married within a year. Lorraine clutched the edge of the table. He made me believe we were a family. He manipulated every detail. And he used you to keep her hidden, Kravitz added quietly. Gave Katie a new last name, a new life, ... and a new mother. One who never questioned the lie. Ridley nodded grimly. He moved across state lines constantly. Changed jobs, towns, names. Built a complete identity out of forged papers. The man you married wasn't Ben Mallory. He never existed. You lived with a ghost named Carter Doyle. But why? Lorraine asked. Why steal her in the first place? No one answered. Ridley turned to the chalkboard and wrote 2 names, Carter Doyle and Catherine Doyle. Then drew a jagged line between them. The 1976 case file is thin, she said. Local law enforcement believed it was a custody dispute. Gone wrong. The mother insisted her ex had no custody rights, but there was no proof. He vanished, took the child with him. The case went cold. And the mother, Lorraine asked. Katie's real mother. Ridley paused. Still alive. Her name is Margaret Doyle. She's 72. She never stopped looking. The weight of the moment sank in. For the first time in over 2 decades, a missing mother was about to learn the truth. Kravitz broke the silence. We need to be prepared. This isn't just about Katie anymore. If Carter was capable of stealing one child, who's to say he didn't take others? Lorraine rubbed her hands together nervously. What about the male blood you found in the car trunk? It wasn't Carter's, and it wasn't Katie's. We sent it for expedited analysis, Ridley said. We should have results within 48 hours. But if Carter was on the run, why leave the tapes? Kravitz asked. Why? Let Katie record anything at all. I don't think he knew, Lorraine said slowly. She had an old recorder. It was my father's. She used to pretend to be a news reporter. Maybe, maybe she recorded them in secret. Ridley looked over. She was smart, and brave, and terrified. Lorraine added she was begging for help on that last tape. Then, the phone rang. Ridley picked up, her eyes widened as she listened, then said sharply, "Send it to me, immediately." She hung up and faced the team. The DNA came back. The male blood. It's a match to a boy named Mason Keller, reported missing in 1983 from rural Idaho. Kravitz stiffened. Another child, Ridley nodded grimly. If that blood was in the trunk, then Carter might have taken him to. But there's no trace of Mason in any photos, records, or family stories. It's like he disappeared into a void. Lorraine's voice broke. How many children? How many lives did he destroy? The weight of it made the room feel smaller. We need to dig into every place Carter or Ben ever lived, Kravitz said. Neighbors. School records, any sign of a second child. Lorraine raised a shaking hand. There was something. One night, I woke up and heard Katie crying in the hallway. I found her alone. She kept saying, "He made the boy leave. He made the boy go away." I thought it was a nightmare. Just a child's bad dream. Ridley's eyes narrowed. It wasn't. Kravitz was already dialing. We'll reopen the Mason Keller case. Pull every thread. As they scrambled into motion, Lorraine stared at the photo of Katie on the evidence board, her big eyes, her quiet sadness. Now it made sense. She had carried something no child should, but there was something else. Tape 3, Lorraine whispered. She called it tape 3, but we only have one. Everyone paused. Ridley leaned in. You think she made more? I think she tried to leave us everything she could, Lorraine said. If we can find the others, maybe we'll finally understand what happened to Mason. And maybe to her. Ridley picked up her coat. Then we go back to where it all started. She glanced at the dusty cassette on the table, its label faded, but still visible. Tape 3. Please help us. If that was the third message, what had she said on the first two? Lorraine sat at the edge of the interrogation room chair, her fingers trembling against the worn tabletop. Her eyes, usually steel-willed in front of the media, now stared at nothing. Detective Meeks slid a glass of water toward her, but she didn't move. She whispered, almost to herself, I was 17 when I met him. The room fell silent. No tape recorder ran. No pen scratched paper. It was just her voice and the weight of 15 years of lies coming apart. Carter Doyle, not Ben Mallory. Not Katie's father. A fugitive with multiple identities and a past filled with smoke and missing children. I was living out of a Greyhound station bathroom in Portland, Lorraine began, her voice low. I'd been kicked out for the last time. My stepfather was... He was the reason I ran. She looked up, eyes wet. When Carter found me, I was starving. He brought me coffee and half a sandwich. I thought he was a social worker at first. He said he'd help me, just until I got on my feet. Detective Meeks nodded gently. And Katie? Lorraine exhaled sharply, pain flashing across her face. He told me Katie was his cousin's daughter. Said her mother died in a fire. That the family didn't want her. He made it sound like we were saving her. Her voice broke. She was 3. So tiny, so quiet. She clung to him like a shadow. And me, I was just grateful to be warm and not pregnant. She wiped her face and continued. We became AA family, I guess. Moved around a lot. Never stayed anywhere too long. Motels, trailers, sometimes just the car. But something always felt off. Katie was scared of him. She flinched when he came near. At first, I told myself it was because she missed her parents. But it got worse. She clenched her fists. She'd wake up screaming. Wouldn't let me brush her hair. Sometimes I'd find bruises. He said she was clumsy. That I shouldn't coddle her. Lorraine's voice dropped to a whisper. I should have run. I should have taken her. But I didn't. I was young and broken, and he knew it. He isolated us. I wasn't allowed to make friends, no jobs, no drivers. License, he controlled everything. She stared down at the table. I stayed. I convinced myself he was just, strict. But over time, I started piecing it together. The fake names. The way he panicked when we saw cops. And one night, Katie asked me something I've never forgotten. She looked up, meeting Mix's gaze directly. She said, when can I go back to the other lady? The one with the yellow hair. Detective Meeks leaned forward. Did you ever ask him who Katie really was? I tried, Lorraine said. But that's when he got violent. First time he ever hit me. Said if I ever questioned him again, he'd take Katie and I'd never see either of them again. She paused, her voice cracking again. He meant it. Detective Meeks scribbled a note, but said nothing, so I stayed quiet. I thought if I just stayed close, I could protect her. Even if I wasn't strong enough to leave, at least I could be there. Lorraine shifted uncomfortably. Eventually, we settled in Eugene, Oregon. We were there almost a year. Longest we ever stayed anywhere. Katie had a school, a teacher who loved her. She started smiling again. I thought, maybe things were getting better. Her voice darkened, but he knew. He always knew when I was getting ideas. That's when he packed the car. Told me we were going to Nevada for a fresh start. I said no. I begged him to leave Katie with me. He refused, said she needed him more than she needed me. Tears spilled freely now. That was the last time I saw her. Detective Meeks let the silence linger before gently asking, why lie all these years, Lorraine? Why not tell the police? Lorraine let out a bitter laugh. Because who would have believed me? A teen runaway, a drunk, a woman who raised a stolen child and never asked questions. They'd have locked me up and thrown away the key. I thought I'd lost Katie forever. But I never stopped looking. Every junkyard, every forgotten mile of desert, I tried. She clenched her jaw. I didn't steal her, but I loved her like she was mine. There was a long pause. Then Meeks spoke softly. We're not here to judge you, Lorraine, but the truth matters now. If Katie's alive, she's in her 20s. We need everything you can give us, where Carter might have taken her. People he talked about. Places that meant something to him. Lorraine nodded. Slowly, there was a place, she whispered. He used to talk about the white cliffs near the Arizona border. Said he'd been there before. Said it was peaceful, forgotten. I always thought he was just rambling, but maybe he meant it. Detective Meeks circled the words, White Cliffs, Arizona border. Lorraine's eyes locked on the note. If she's out there, she said quietly, I'll go. I'll search every rock if I have to. Meeks nodded. You won't have to do it alone anymore. Outside the interrogation room, Agent Carmen Dawes waited, arms crossed. She had spent years tracking Carter Doyle under various aliases, and now the puzzle pieces were falling into place. But the final one, Katie, was still missing. As Meeks stepped out, Carmen asked, Do we believe her? Meeks hesitated, then nodded. I think she believed she was Katie's mother. That counts for something. Carmen's eyes flicked down the hall where Lorraine sat slumped in her chair. Well, she said, pulling out a marked-up map. Time to see what's left of Carter Doyle's trail. Let's hope it leads to someone still alive. Inside the room, Lorraine sat in silence, hands folded. She was no longer crying. Only one thing echoed in her mind now. Not her guilt, not her past. Just a whisper, a child's voice on a broken cassette. He's not my dad. Please help us. Lorraine whispered back, I'm coming, baby. The morning sun slanted over the high Nevada desert, casting long shadows across the brittle scrub and red soil. A convoy of forensic vans, state troopers, and a local news truck rumbled down. The crumbling access road toward the long-abandoned rest stop Lorraine had circled on her old map, a place she had driven by a dozen times. Too haunted by guilt to ever stop. Detective Salgado stood near the lead vehicle, squinting at the spot. The air buzzed with cicadas and anticipation. Lorraine sat in the passenger seat behind him, clutching Katie's faded photograph in trembling hands. Her eyes were dry now, beyond tears, hollowed out by years of waiting and fear. The map she'd marked by hand, smudged with coffee stains, tears, and scribbled hopes, had led them here. The rest stop had once been a place for weary travelers. Now, it was desolate. The concrete picnic table was cracked down the middle, one leg buckling slightly. Tufts of dried weeds sprouted through broken pavement. No one had picnicked here in years, but something about the place, its eerie stillness, the rusting cigarette bin, the single bent road sign half buried in sand, whispered of things hidden. 2. Cadaver dogs began their sweep, handlers close behind. They passed the table once. Nothing. On the second pass, one dog froze, then began barking sharply. The other followed suit. Both circled the same patch of earth, near the concrete slab, tails. Stiff eyes locked on the ground, the forensic team moved quickly. Within an hour, they had cordoned off a 10 by 10 foot section, digging carefully beneath the cracked table base. The dirt turned darker as they went deeper, richer, disturbed. And then, just beneath the surface, the first sign, a strip of red cloth, faded and frayed. Lorraine recognized it instantly. Katie's favorite sweater. A hush fell over the site as the forensic techs confirmed human remains. The small skeletal frame was curled inward, as if trying to hide from whatever had come. The bones were delicate. A child's. Lorraine turned away, her fingers clawing at her chest like she was trying to pull something out. She was right here, she whispered. All this time. But the search didn't stop. Not 10 feet from Katie's grave, the team found another set of remains, larger, slumped on its side, a bullet hole clean through the skull. A rusted revolver was half buried near the body, grip facing outward, like someone had thrown it in a final moment of revulsion. Dental records confirmed what Lorraine already knew. Carter Doyle, the man she'd loved, the man who had lied, the man who had taken Katie, stolen a child, and woven a life of illusion around her. A man capable of the unthinkable. And yet, even now, Lorraine felt a twisted mourning. For the man she thought he was, for the girl she could never protect. At the station, the coroner delivered the final confirmation. Katie Mallory, or rather Katie Lynn Forrester, had died sometime between 6 and June 22, 1984. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. The autopsy showed defensive wounds on her tiny forearms. She had fought. The case that had haunted Nevada for 15 years had reached its most brutal truth. But there was one question left unanswered. Who killed Carter? The positioning of the body, the single gunshot wound, and the lack of hesitation marks pointed to execution, not suicide. There were no fingerprints on the revolver, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses, just the desert and the wind, and the tape. The one Katie had recorded, her voice fragile, frightened, now replayed in every living room across the country, as news outlets broadcasted the tragedy. He's not my dad, please help us. Echoed from television sets and radios. But someone had heard her plea. All those years ago, it wasn't Lorraine. It wasn't a stranger. It was Carter himself. The letter found in the glove box of the Pontiac, initially brushed aside as irrelevant, was re-examined. It wasn't in Carter's handwriting, but it was addressed to him. It read, "She remembers things now. She's not as easy to lie to anymore. If you love her, you'll stop before this goes any further. What you took, you can't fix." Signed. Only with the initials M.E. Who was M.E.? Lorraine stared at the letter for days, trying to recall anyone with those initials. A neighbor, a social worker, an old friend of Carter's. Nothing fit. But the forensic team had one final clue. Embedded in the creases of the paper were skin cells. A partial DNA profile. It didn't match Carter, Lorraine, or Katie. The mystery deepened even as it closed. In the end, the courts ruled Katie's death a homicide. Carter's a suspected murder with no known suspect. The case was officially closed, but far from complete. Weeks later, Lorraine returned to the rest stop one final time. The police tape was gone. The earth had been refilled. A small wooden cross marked the spot, adorned with a child's pink ribbon and a stone engraved with Katie's name. Lorraine knelt beside it, pressing her palm to the dirt as if to feel her daughter's heartbeat beneath it. "I failed you," she whispered, "but they'll remember you now." She stayed until dusk, watching the desert bleed orange and purple. When the first stars appeared, she stood slowly, her eyes catching a faint glimmer in the distance, the outline of a truck. Headlights off, parked quietly at the edge of the horizon. She blinked. The truck was gone. Maybe it was the wind, maybe a ghost, or maybe someone still watching, someone who knew more. As she turned to leave, the wind picked up, swirling sand around her like a veil. And from the distant road behind her, a new trail of tire tracks carved fresh lines across the desert floor. It didn't take long for the investigation to turn. Lorraine had returned home to Boston after Katie's burial. The weight of 15 years of grief transformed into a new burden, not just mourning, but knowing what happened, how it happened, and what she had done. But the quiet didn't last. Not a week later, Detective Salgado called. "We found something," he said. "We need you to come in." At the Renault field office, Lorraine sat across from Salgado again. He looked different now, not colder, but more cautious. He opened a thin manila folder and laid it flat on the table. Inside were photos, the revolver found near Carter Doyle's body, a torn motel receipt, and fingerprint analysis reports. Lorraine's prints were on the revolver. The receipt was for a room at the Desert Pines Motel, less than 3 miles from the rest stop, dated June 20th, 1984, signed, L. Mallory. Lorraine stared at the paper, her mouth parted, then closed. She didn't ask how they found it. She already knew. "You were there," Salgado said gently. "The night Carter died." She didn't deny it. Her eyes welled up, lips trembling as she tried to hold the truth in her throat, but it wouldn't stay hidden any longer. "Yes," she whispered. "I was there." Salgado leaned in. "Tell me everything, all of it." Lorraine's voice quaked at first, then steadied as the dam broke. After receiving the anonymous letter in the early summer of 1984, Lorraine had begun her search in secret. She knew Carter was hiding something. There were no paper trails, no bank accounts in his name, no job records after 1983. But she found a pattern in motel registrations across the state, fake names, but always with a young girl listed as a guest. On June 20th, she checked into the Desert Pines Motel under her real name. She waited until nightfall, then drove toward the old rest stop with a friend's borrowed gun in her purse, just in case. She didn't plan to use it. She only wanted to see Katie, to know she was okay. But her anger burned too close to the surface. She found Carter's car parked alone under the broken light pole. A small dome tent was pitched beneath the slope beside the table. She parked behind a bush and crept closer. Her breath caught when she saw the outline of a child, her child, sleeping inside the tent. Then she saw Carter sitting outside the tent on a folding chair, smoking. Lorraine stepped into the clearing like a ghost rising from the sand. He didn't flinch. "Wondered how long it'd take you to find us." His voice was calm, empty. "I want my daughter," she said. "She's not yours anymore," he replied. "You gave up that right the moment you called the cops on me." Lorraine's hand trembled at her side. "You kidnapped her." "She came with me," Carter said. "She chose me. You were too busy with your own life to notice she needed someone. Don't twist this. You left her behind, Lorraine." His words sliced her open. Katie stirred inside the tent. Lorraine could hear the zipper twitching. "I never stopped looking for her," she hissed. "You never deserved her." That was when Lorraine lunged, Not with the gun, with her fists. Years of rage exploded as she pushed him backward, both of them tumbling to the dirt. Carter struck her across the jaw. She kicked free, scrambled for her purse. He grabbed it too. In the scuffle, the revolver spilled onto the ground. Katie screamed. She had woken, frozen by the sound of her mother and father, or the man she thought was her father. Fighting like wild animals, Lorraine got to the gun first. Carter rose, fury twisted across his face. "I'll never let you take her," he snarled. Then he reached behind his back. She pulled the trigger. One shot, he fell instantly. She didn't know if he had a weapon. She didn't wait to find out. She dropped the gun, ran to Katie, held her tight. The girl shook uncontrollably, whispering, "You hurt him. You hurt him." Lorraine tried to explain, tried to calm her, but Katie wouldn't listen. Wouldn't stop crying. She pulled away, backing toward the tent, her face pale, her hands shaking. "I hate you," she shrieked. Lorraine reached for her. "Please, Katie." The girl turned and fled into the desert. Lorraine searched for hours, screaming her name, calling into the night. She never found her. At dawn, exhausted, shattered, and bleeding from her mouth and wrists, she returned to the motel. She left the area the next morning, and never told a soul. "I thought she died alone out there," Lorraine said now, her voice cracking. "I didn't know Carter found her again. I didn't know he hurt her, I thought. I thought I killed a monster, but failed to save the child." Salgado sat in silence. "You understand this complicates everything," he said. "You didn't report the shooting. You ran. I was scared," she whispered. "She hated me. She didn't understand, and I didn't know where she'd gone." "Do you think someone else saw what happened?" Salgado asked. "Someone followed you? Someone who sent that letter?" Lorraine looked away. "I don't know, maybe. Someone warned Carter. Maybe they warned me, too." Salgado closed the folder. "I can't promise how this ends," he said, "but I believe you. And I think someone out there knows more." Lorraine nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. "What happens now?" she asked. He didn't answer. Not with words, he simply slid her the letter again. The initials stared back at her. The courtroom was silent when Lorraine Mallory entered, escorted by 2 officers. Her wrists were bound in front of her, the chain rattling faintly as she walked. She looked older than her 51 years, like someone who had aged a lifetime in the last few weeks. Her posture was stiff, her face pale, but her eyes were clear, sober, focused, determined. Her guilty plea had spared the court a long and public trial. The evidence was indisputable, her fingerprints on the gun. The motel receipt, the fragments of her own confession etched into both the police report and the decades of guilt she'd carried. But the judge allowed one final request. Lorraine would be permitted to speak. She stood behind the podium, her voice steady, despite the emotion that weighed on every word. "I won't ask for forgiveness," she said, her eyes drifting across the crowded room. "Not from the court, and certainly not from you," she added, her voice softening as she looked toward the back row. There, seated between a victim advocate and her husband, was Rebecca Donnelly-Katie's biological mother. Her shoulders trembled under a worn grey shawl, her eyes red but locked on Lorraine's. Rebecca had once called her daughter Margot, a name Lorraine had never known until recently. Katie had been taken at age 3 by a man she thought was her father. Lorraine, just 16 at the time, had been another of Carter Doyle's victims. "I was broken when I met him," Lorraine continued, the courtroom holding its collective breath. "I didn't know what love looked like, or truth. He said Katie was his cousin's kid, said her parents were addicts, that he was saving her. I wanted to believe it so badly. I needed it to be true because I needed someone to need me." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. "I mothered her the best I could. I read to her at night, packed her lunch, kissed her forehead when she had fevers. But in my heart, I knew something was off. I ignored the signs, and then it was too late." In the second row, Detective Priya Mather sat with a folded notepad in her lap. She had been the one to track down Rebecca after the forensic breakthrough. It had taken weeks to navigate the web of closed adoption files, sealed juvenile records, and outdated missing persons reports. But they had found her and told her the truth. Her daughter had been found and lost again. Lorraine's voice trembled. To Rebecca Donnelly took part in stealing your daughter's life. I may not have kidnapped her, but I kept her. I stayed when I should have run. And I let fear guide every decision I made for 15 years. A quiet gasp came from someone in the audience. Lorraine paused, letting it hang. I can't change the past, she whispered. But I want the world to know Katie was more than a headline. She was bright, funny, she hummed when she colored, and she used to make me birthday cards out of cereal boxes. She deserved better. You both did. A long silence followed. The judge cleared his throat and offered a brief, tired nod. Lorraine was escorted away. She didn't fight. She didn't look back. The courtroom slowly emptied. Rebecca stayed in her seat, her hands trembling, her eyes glazed with something between agony and relief. After a moment, she stood and walked to the prosecutor's desk. Quietly, she asked to speak to Lorraine someday. In private. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted into cameras. 15-year-old cold case closed. Read one headline. Mother, not monster. Read another. Lorraine was sentenced to 10 years, with a possibility of parole in 5. Her public statement sparked a wave of debate. Some saw her as complicit, others as a victim of prolonged psychological abuse, but all agreed on one thing. Katie Margot had been failed by nearly everyone around her. Months later, Lorraine sat in a correctional facility, poring over a sketchbook someone had mailed her. Rebecca had sent it. Inside were pages of my childhood drawings, carefully preserved. One page showed a house, drawn in thick red crayon. Above it was written, in a child's shaky hand, home. Lorraine pressed her fingers to the page, a sob escaping her chest. Detective Mather, back at her desk in Nevada, closed the final case file. She stared at the folder before slowly sliding it into the archive box. Some mysteries unraveled, like thread, others, like this one, unraveled people. She glanced at the wall. A photograph of Catamago now hung there. One of the last pictures taken at the diner, recovered from a manager's wall. The girl's smile was thin, uncertain, her eyes distant. But now, at least her story had an ending. Rebecca started a foundation for missing children, named Margot's Light. The launch event drew national coverage. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice was soft and steady. My daughter never got to grow up, but maybe another will. Lorraine's parole hearing was scheduled for the following year. Whether she would be released remained uncertain. But as she wrote her final letter addressed to both Katie and Rebecca, she closed with a line that echoed long after the ink dried. What remains isn't guilt, it's love, and it's yours. And with that, the case of Katie Mallory Margot Donnelly was finally laid to rest. But for everyone involved, what remained was something deeper. Not justice, not closure, not even peace. Just memory. And the weight of what it cost.